this lesson, we're going to talk about story elements in regards to character and characterization. A character is an important element of a story. Now, the character is going to be a person, an animal, or a personified object. Personified object means that it is an object that has human characteristics or qualities. So if I have a toaster and it has eyes and a mouth and it can sing and dance, that is an example of a personified object. Now, a character is going to take part in the action of the story, and they're going to be the protagonist or the main character, or they're going to be one of the minor characters. Now, characters have expectations, and these expectations move the plot forward. Now, there's two types of expectations. There's internal expectations and external expectations. An internal expectation is the behaviors and actions that people expect from themselves. So, for example, Julia expects that the hours she spent jogging over the summer will make her a better soccer player. She knows that she's going to be a better soccer player, and she expects herself to be a better soccer player because she's putting forth the time to practice. She's putting forth that effort that's going to make her a better soccer player, so she expects it. Now, there's also external expectations, which are how other people expect the character to behave or act. So if it says Isabel's teacher expects her to study for tomorrow's math quiz, Isabel's teacher expects her to study because maybe she's studious. Maybe that teacher knows that she's always trying to get that A on that test, and so she expects her to behave that way. Now, I know there are many stories where characters are expected to behave a certain way. So, for example, in the story The Ravine, one of the characters is expected to climb up to the top of the mountain or the top of the ravine in order to jump off. And the reason he's expected to do this is because his friends are kind of pushing him to do so. So they're expecting him to jump off. And so he has this expectation that's kind of motivating him up there. Now, expectations can become motivations. Now, a motivation is what is driving the character to behave a certain way. It's what's causing them to act, right? And so characters can be motivated to act a certain way based off of the expectations that are placed on them. If a character is expected to behave or act in a certain way, then they might be motivated to behave and act in that specific way. Now let's talk about the types of characters. First, you have your protagonist, which is the main character of the story. This is your hero, the good guy. Then you've got your antagonist. This is the character or force that opposes the protagonist. So this is your bad guy, your villain. There's also major and minor characters. A major character is a more important character that plays a bigger role in the story, while a minor character is less important and they play a smaller role in the story. Then you have a dynamic, also known as a round character, which is a character that changes and grows over time. A static character, also known as a flat character, which is a character who remains the same and does not have growth. And a foil, which is a character that has opposite characteristics. So, for example, if my main character was a cheerleader, the foil would be the band nerd. Okay, so looking at protagonist and antagonist. The protagonist, like we said, was the main character of the story, and the antagonist, as we said, is the character or force that opposes the protagonist. So the conflict, remember, which is the problem, between the protagonist and the antagonist is what's going to move the action of the story along. So let's look at the protagonist first. Now, the protagonist is usually the hero of the story that's going to try to solve the problem or try to achieve a goal. They're going to be the one coming head-to-head with the conflict, which is the problem. And they're, throughout the story, going to gain the reader's sympathy. So the reader is going to side with the protagonist. Now, the protagonist is going to learn throughout their journey. They're going to grow. And so they're going to change during the course of the story. So the protagonist is usually a dynamic character. And they're going to see that the conflict is resolved. Now, then, you have your antagonist. Your antagonist is often the bad guy. And their sole thing that they're going to do is create problems for the protagonist. The antagonist is usually a static character. They don't change throughout the course of the story. And all they're going to do is just try to make the protagonist's life difficult. So let's talk about dynamic and static characters. A dynamic character is a character that changes over the course of the story. They're going to be learning lessons that's going to teach them that they need to change. Now, they are not going to be the same at the end of the story as they were at the beginning of the story. A static character does not change over the course of the story. They don't learn a lesson, and they're the same at the end as they were at the beginning. So, for example, if I'm using Frozen as an example, a dynamic character would be Elsa. Elsa learns the power of love, and she learns to love herself and her powers, right? While the static character is going to be Olaf. He's just happy the whole time, and he really doesn't change. Now, major versus minor characters. Major characters include the protagonist and the antagonist. Minor characters, they play less important roles, but they support the major characters. So major characters, again, include protagonist or main character who tries to achieve the goal or solve the problem. Major characters also include the antagonist. Remember, there can be more than one antagonist. So think Batman, he's got more than one villain after him. And these antagonists are going to oppose the protagonist, and these major characters are going to help move the plot forward based off of the decisions that they make. Then you have minor characters, which play smaller roles in the story. They may provide contrast or act as a foil against the protagonist or antagonist. So, for example, in Harry Potter, you have Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy. They're foils. In Frozen, you have Elsa, who is so strict and stern, and you have Anna, who's happy-go-lucky. Okay? Now, the minor characters are going to flesh out the world of the story. They're going to kind of give you more of an idea of what the story around them is like, and they're going to help move the action of the world, of the story forward. So this is how a minor character can advance the plot. So we're going to use Lion King, which is a pretty common story, and we're going to look at the minor characters Timon, Pumbaa, Nala, Rafiki, and Mufasa. So there's 4 events here. Now the first event is when Timon and Pumbaa discover Simba. So Simba is there, after his dad has been murdered, and he gets discovered by Timon and Pumbaa. Now, this prevents Simba from dying. If he would have been left alone, he would have died, and right then and there, story would have ended. But because he was discovered by these minor characters, it moves the plot forward. So then we have Timon and Pumbaa, and they teach him Hakuna Matata, right? So Simba learns Hakuna Matata, makes his decision that he wants to live a life of no worries, and he decides that he's never going to return to his pride. And so this shows how he leads into adulthood, right? So again, moving the plot forward. Event 3 is when Nala discovers that Simba is alive. She expresses how much Simba is actually really needed back at home, and she accuses him of abandoning the pride. And so this kind of puts that seed of doubt in him of maybe I did the wrong thing. And so that thought of, hey, I probably did the wrong thing is going to move the plot forward into him trying to solve the problem. Rafiki and then Mufasa talk to Simba in event 4, and Rafiki allows Simba to talk to his father again. And his father says that very famous quote, "Remember who you are." And so Simba returns to the pride, he defeats Scar, he takes his rightful place as king, problem is solved. And all thanks to all these minor characters. Now, something that's really important for you to know is characterization. Characterization is the way a character is presented and developed. When authors characterize, they're presenting or developing a character by describing what the character looks like, how they act, what they say, what they think, and then how other characters, treat them based off of what they say. Now, there's 2 types of characterization. There's direct and indirect. Direct characterization is very clearly stated, easy to see, might be spoken by the narrator. For example, Jaina was confident and in control, and those rare times that she wasn't completely sure of herself, she never let it show. So it's very directly stated that she's confident and in control. Then you have indirect characterization, which is not clearly stated, can be shown by how characters react to events, and can be seen in characters' thoughts, dialogues, and actions. So, for example, "Are you sure of this?" Donald whispered. "Is this really what you want to do?" he added urgently, taking a step back. So we can see here through the dialogue and also through the action of taking a step back that Donald is not very sure of the situation. Okay? Now, an author can create indirect characterization, again, through dialogue, thoughts, actions, and reactions. So I'm going to show you an example of what this would look like through the same scenario. So in this case, Lee is trying to get back his music player. So in dialogue, it would look like this. "That's my music player. Give it back," Lee demanded. In a thought, it would look like this. I wish my brother would stop using my music player, Lee thought. In action, it would look like this. Lee grabbed the music player out of his brother's hand. And as a reaction, it would look like this. Lee's brother tried to put his music player back before Lee noticed that he had used it. Now, recognizing indirect characterization. In order to recognize it, you got to ask yourself the following questions. What is the character saying? What are they thinking? What are they doing? How are other characters reacting to them? And what does the character like? That will help you understand characterization of that character. Now, in order to make an inference on a character, you're going to have to pair up what you know about the characterization with prior knowledge. So remember, an inference is a conclusion based off of evidence that's in the text and your prior knowledge. So you're going to ask yourself these three things. How does the author describe the character? What does the author say? And what does the character say and how does the character act? Based off of these three things paired up with your prior knowledge, you're going to be able to make an inference about the character. Well, that was character in regards to story elements. Hopefully now you understand character